This is the Financial Beat, helping you hit all the right notes in your financial plan. So sit back as we strike up the band. The Financial Beat with Logan Sadler starts now.
Welcome to another edition of the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, VP, Chief Investment Officer at Regari Financial, serving you in Southern California. And the plan of this show is to talk about getting you to and through retirement. That's what Logan Sadler does so well. I'm Ron Stutz. Always a real privilege to hang out with Logan for an hour on this show. Logan, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Ron. Looking forward to a great show here, and I know we're going to do our best.
Got a lot of interesting things to talk about here today, but first of all, I want to give everybody your phone number so that they're familiar with that. This is your opportunity to write down this phone number, put it in your phone, whatever you need to do to remember it, because it's very important, or just jot it down as I say it and then call the number right away. You don't have to wait. 888-823-PLAN, 888-823-PLAN. Call that number right now. Leave a message with your name and phone number, and then you'll get a call back from Regari Financial at the beginning of the week. And then you can set a time to have a get-together with Logan Sadler. We call it a discovery meeting. It's not going to cost you anything and not going to obligate you to do anything at all beyond that. 888-823-PLAN. Well, if you were growing up as a baseball fan, certainly you're familiar with the name Yogi Berra, who was a legendary player with the New York Yankees. Let's talk about financial planning with Yogi Berra. You up for that?
Let's do it. Well, believe it or not, Ron, I'm from out here in California. Dodgers are probably my favorite California team, but my actual favorite team is actually the Yankees, believe it or not. I like it or love it or hate it.
I grew up being a Yankee fan as well, so hey, we got a lot in common there.
Hey, yeah.
Yogi Berra is one of the most quotable people to ever live, and when we look at some of the quotes through the right lens, they can teach us some lessons about financial planning. And I don't think for a minute that Yogi Berra had anything special in mind when he said these things. He just said some really dumb things, and then we take them and
dumb luck, huh?
Yeah, exactly. He said one time in an interview, "I never said most of the things I said." What the heck was he talking about then?
That's pretty funny. I think relating this to financial, planning and things like that, I think for those of you out there, if you ever had an experience where maybe you were sold something and then down the road you remembered, something from the sales pitch that actually probably wasn't true, right, or wasn't accurate. And, that happens a lot when it comes to retirement planning, right? I mean, in everything, really. I mean, whether it's when you buy a warranty or a car or whatever it is, but also when it comes to financial planning, where I've seen some clients have a strategy that was sold to them, and I'm reviewing their overall plan later on down the road, and it seems like a lot of those things aren't necessarily as true as they might have thought from back in the original meeting. And I think one of the best ways to get around this, and it's something we like to do, is when we're looking at, things like annuities. We are licensed to utilize annuities and insurance products, as well as the whole other side of the industry there on the market side, and we believe that both of those could be really well fit for some people in their financial plan together. And what I've seen, Ron, is it's very hard for clients to look at, I got IRAs, I have 401ks, I got mutual funds, I got annuities, insurance products, all of this different stuff, right? And so I think one of the best ways to make sure that you're not sold something that you didn't really need or want is reviews. I think reviewing your financial plan with that advisor is as important as the financial plan itself, right? Because that allows you to kind of get refresher on everything that was said for the plan, and also it was reviewed 6 months later, a year later, right? Multiple different times, and it's continued to be reviewed, because that way it helps eliminate a lot of that. Well, I thought you said, because a lot of times I've seen people that were sold an annuity, for example, and they haven't heard from that person in 10 years, right? Or they were sold an insurance product and they haven't heard from that advisor in 5 or 10 years. And so I think those reviews are very, very important, and that's part of what we do. Is we're not, here's a product, see you later. It's more of, hey, here's your overall financial plan. Let's work through this and review, and making sure that everything is still up to date and still that you remember everything correctly, and that it's still important in the plan a year later, 2 years later, and 5 years later.
Here's another Yogiism. A nickel ain't worth a dime anymore. No, I don't think Yogi was thinking about inflation or anything. It's just something he said. It's just a dumb thing that came out of his mouth.
That is funny, because these actually do line up pretty easy. I think we've all experienced inflation, right, the last few years, and it's a very, very real thing. And it's funny because it doesn't take long for a dime to be worth less than a nickel, right? For example. And if you haven't addressed the inflation in your investments, you're definitely missing an important piece of your retirement plan. I've seen it so many times, Ron, where I've had clients come in there and say, "Hey, Logan, I'm 62 years old and my husband's 64 years old, and we're getting ready to retire maybe this year or next year, and we got $500,000, right? Okay, and we want some income and things like that. We're a little worried about long-term care." But we're extremely conservative. We don't like the market. We don't like anything with any risk. And so maybe their money's all in cash or all in bonds, right? For example, or CDs or something like that. And the problem with that, Ron, is, it's okay to be conservative, but one of the biggest things is, you look at things like cash and CDs and money markets and stuff like that, is it has very, very well underperformed the cost of inflation, especially over the last 5 or 10 years when you look at it on a historical scale. And so it's one of those things where that $500,000, not only are we taking income from it, but also it might be losing huge purchasing power each year due to inflation if we're not investing it in something that's going to produce a decent return, right? I mean, because you look at, CDs for the last few years, Ron, we're paying 1 to 2%. Yeah. For a 1 year or 2 year CD, and you look at with inflation, with being over the last few years being anywhere from 7 to almost 9% on some of those years, it's not even close, right? So you got to make sure in your retirement plan, it's okay to be conservative, it's okay to not want to take a lot of risk, but you got to look at other avenues of how to try to keep up with inflation as close as possible to try to help hedge that, because it could be a huge, huge impact in the retirement plan.
We're talking about things that Yogi Berra said that we can apply to financial planning, and here's a funny one, Logan. You're going to like this one. If you don't know where you're going, you might wind up someplace else. You can apply that to financial planning, can't you?
I 100% can. And Ron, when most people come into the office, I always say very few of them. I've had a couple of them now as people are getting a little bit more, I think people are a little more savvy today than they were a few years ago, just because a lot more of shows like this or education that's out there for people. And, very, very rarely does a client come in and say, "Hey, you know what, I want to get ready to retire next year. Here's exactly what I'm going to do, right? I'm going to structure things this way. I got this much of income coming in. I got this much of risk, this much conservative, and here's my estate plan, right? It's very rare that happens, right? Yeah. Most of the time, Ron, it's, "Hey, you know what? Again, I got, $500,000 or I got $1 million or whatever the amount is." And they go, "And I'm thinking of retiring. I would like to retire this year or next year or in 5 years, whatever year it is." And that's about as far as it gets, right? A lot of times they don't have much more in-depth in their head as far as how they're going to do it, right? And so that's where a lot of it is. Sometimes people retire with just that, right? They'll say, "Well, I'm going to pull some money out of my 401k when I need it, and then, I should be okay for about 3 or 4 years, but then if costs go up, I might have to spend a little bit more. I might move, I might pay off the house, or I think I'm just going to move," or, there's not a whole lot of planning put into it, right? And I think that's a very dangerous way to retire, because the odds of people running out of money are a lot higher than people think, right? And so especially with the wrong decisions made and not having that comprehensive plan in place, it could make those chances a lot higher of possibly running out of money. So yeah. I think, retiring without a plan is definitely very, very dangerous. So when you're getting ready to retire, 5 years before, 2 years before, a year before, as far in advance as you can, you should be looking over a lot of, how much income do you need in retirement? How much income can you reasonably generate in your portfolio? Do I have to be saving more? Am I going to have to cut certain costs, right? Am I going to have to downsize my home? Things like that, right? You want to really kind of run through all that. And that's what we do here as a good financial planner, is help kind of put all those pieces into place to get you ready before retirement. That way we're not just retiring and we have no idea what we're going to retire to.
You're listening to the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, and I'm Ron Stutz. Yogi Berra is here too. Well, obviously Yogi is not here, but we've got some of Yogi's crazy quotes that we're talking about today. And Logan, being the excellent wordsmith that he is able to make some sense out of these things when it comes to financial planning. Here's something else that Yogi said one time, one of my favorites. "When you come to a fork in the road, take it." What did he mean by that?
Yeah, that's pretty funny. I think what he means is, sometimes in retirement planning, you're forced to make choices. And, at what age you take Social Security is a good one. Whether or not you take a spousal benefit on your pension. those are just a few examples I could think of, Ron, where, and again, I can go on for days about different examples there, but in each situation, there's typically a few different choices that you got to understand. And each of those options you're going to be laid out are going to have pros and cons. And I think one of the things I always preach is, people say, annuities are bad, or stocks are bad, or mutual funds are bad, or we could say anything is bad. What I always say is everything does have a pro and a con, right? I mean, when you look at all of your investment choices, taking a single pension versus a joint pension, that has a pro and a con, right? And you got to make sure in your situation, you're running the numbers and looking at how it's going to pertain to your situation and seeing if that's going to be a pro or a con for you, because it is different for everybody. And when you look at retirement planning in specific, right, I look at things like, different, like I said, annuities or pension payouts or, investment decisions or any of that type of stuff. There's so many different things where you can calculate it, and you want to make sure based off of your situation, you're getting the best, you're getting the most pro out of that outweigh the cons. Because again, not every investment or not every decision is 100% perfect, but it might be in your situation.
Okay, here's another Yogi-ism for you. The future ain't what it used to be. Well, he got that one right by accident.
Yeah, he did. He didn't even know what he was talking about way back then, right? But he was right. Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you look at retirement planning, it used to be a lot easier for everybody, right? I mean, I always say, back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, there wasn't really a lot of retirement planners because when you retired, you had a pension, right? You were in the military, you were a steel worker, you were a union worker, you were something like that, right? And you had a pension. You turned, 62 or whatever age it was, and you all of a sudden got a pension and you got Social Security, right? That was basically it. Wasn't a whole lot of decisions, wasn't a whole lot of risk management. Things were just a little bit different, right? And things like banks and interest rates and things like that were a lot more competitive than they were to now. So it didn't take a lot. Now I feel like you look at a lot of these things that are more difficult, where you're having to provide a lot more of your retirement than you used to have to, right? A lot of people have given up, where employers are no longer giving pensions; they're giving matches on 401ks. So a lot of people are retiring with, they have their Social Security, but they also might have, $100,000 in 401ks, $1 million in 401ks, sometimes multi-millions of dollars in 401ks and IRAs. And you got to now figure out how to navigate that. What are the taxes going to look like over your retirement? How much income can that reasonably produce in your retirement? As well, if you wanted to leave money behind, like a legacy, how do we help structure that? So there's a lot of different, tools and things like that you got to be able to put into place. And I think that, hiring the right financial advisor that has access and is able to use all those tools is something that's super, super important. And again, something we didn't have to worry about back then.
Okay, one more Yogi-ism here. He said, it's like deja vu all over again. Kind of redundant, but does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I can make sense of that a little bit, right? I think he's talking about like cycles in the market, right? Right now we're going through what some people consider a downtime, definitely. And what I always say is, things are always going well and everyone's always buying and things are going good, right? And then a correction happens and suddenly everyone's panicked and, out of the markets. It's funny, Ron, because I remember a couple of years ago where we were talking to clients about, safe money like CDs, money markets, insurance products, annuities, structured notes, things like that are a little bit more lower risk or safer money. You could kind of categorize them, I guess, in some instances. And people really didn't want to hear much about that, right? People were like, man, the market's doing so well. Why would I not just be in the market? And so it's hard to kind of see the true power of diversification. And then all of a sudden, fast forward to now, a lot of clients are saying, well, why would I want money in the market, man? That thing's just been going down, right? So I want more safe money. And so it's all about finding that balance to it and looking at things over the long period of time, because a lot of the times market cycles do feel like deja vu, right? Because we have went through them in some form or another. It might have had a different name, like, the Great Depression or the Great Recession or the COVID pandemic or, whatever instance you want to throw in front of it. We've had these market cycles, so they do begin to feel like deja vu, but it's super important to understand how they kind of fit into your plan. And that's one of the huge value adds that we do here at our firm is, again, we talk about what's called the 5 pillars of retirement planning. Every one of our clients that comes on board with our firm and, feels we're a good fit after our process, we have their whole retirement plan has the 5 pillars of retirement planning. We got to cover income planning, investment planning, tax planning, healthcare planning, and legacy planning, right? All that has to be covered in that one financial plan, and not just here's a product and you're good. It's really about finding out how do we position our assets and everything like that to where we're covering those 5 pillars of retirement planning to transition us into that, peace of mind and that ideal retirement that we're looking for. So if you're one of those clients, you're getting close to retirement, again, you might have $300,000, you might have $3 million. It doesn't matter. Just give us a call and we can see if, again, we're a good fit to work together and help get you on your way to retirement.
The number to call if you'd like to have a discovery meeting with Logan Sadler, 888-823-PLAN, 888-823-PLAN. You can call that number today, leave a message with your name and phone number, and you'll get a call back from the good folks at Regari Financial and set a time to have your discovery meeting with the one and only Logan Sadler. That's right. You talk with Logan, the same guy you hear on this show every week. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call to make it happen. It's a discovery meeting, kind of a getting to know you session. There's no obligation, certainly not going to cost you anything. You could do it on the phone or maybe via Zoom, or maybe you might want to come into the office when, eventually, if you decide you'd like to move on from there. Hemet and Redlands, that's where the offices are. Logan Sadler ready to help you wherever you happen to be. I'm Ron Stutz along with Logan Sadler, and we'll be right back with more on the Financial Beat.
We all know Congress has approved trillions of dollars in spending the past year. It's all on top of the tens of trillions of dollars of debt our nation already owes. Yet we're living with some of the lowest tax rates in history. Now, how long do you think that's going to last? Learn how you can prepare for future tax implications by watching Logan Sadler of Regari Financial's exclusive webinar, How Tax Planning Changes Through the 4 Stages of Retirement. Just text the word advice to the number 21,000, and we'll text you back a link to the webinar right away. Text advice to 21,000 and make sure you don't have to pay a cent more in taxes than you have to. To access the free webinar right now, text advice to 21,000. Everyone has the perfect song for different events. That song you play at the gym to get you really pumped up. And the song that you play on your happiest days. And there are those songs for even your saddest ones. But what song do you hear when you push play on your portfolio? If you don't know, or if you don't like the tune, do something about it. Get a financial plan in place today, and you won't have to wonder what song plays next. Call Regari Financial at 888-823-PLAN. That's 888-823-7526 for a complimentary financial review. 888-823-PLAN.
This is the Financial Beat.
We are back now with more of the Financial Beat. Logan Sadler is on the radio. Thank you very much for listening to the show today, wherever you are in Southern California. If you're in Rancho Cucamonga, Loma Linda, Corona, Indio, Menifee, wherever you happen to be, or even if you're out of state somewhere, hey, thank you very much for being with us today. 888-823-PLAN. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call to get in touch with Logan Sadler, Vice President and Chief Investment Officer at Regari Financial. 888-823-PLAN. Very important number, and we'll give it to you several times during the show here today because it's so important to go ahead and call that number and get set on your financial planning. Hey, let's talk about surviving a market crash, and with a market crash survival guide prepared here by Logan Sadler. And if you were prepared for a market downturn that you experienced in 2022, you were probably a rare creature because I don't think many people were really prepared for that. If you were, good for you. But if not, let's talk about what you need to do to be ready for the next one, whenever that may be. Number one, always have an understanding of how much risk you're exposed to. And that's one thing that Logan Sadler will make sure you know about if you are doing business with him and having him help you with your financial planning.
Yeah, you're right, Ron. I mean, every client that comes on board, or even everybody that comes in for a discovery meeting, let's say, if you're one of those clients that wants to move forward, we have our discovery meeting where we go over, what your goals, what your dreams are, what assets you have, what your time frame is, and things like that. And what we do is we ask, after that first meeting, I ask for all your documents, right? I want tax returns, I want statements, I want everything to kind of put a whole profile together. And one of the first things we do, Ron, is we ask clients in that discovery meeting, risk tolerance, what are some things you're comfortable with on the upside? What are some things you're comfortable with on the downside? All that. And then we actually take their full statements and we run a risk report. And what that allows us to do is really compare where they're at versus where they wanted to be risk-wise. And like you said, a lot of the times it's nowhere close, right? It doesn't even add up to where they wanted to be. They're taking a lot more risk currently than where they might have been comfortable with by not understanding risk. And I think so many people can say, I'm conservative or I'm aggressive or I'm moderate, but they might not know exactly what that means, right? Or even how their portfolio lines up when you look at all of the different asset classes in there, like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, right? Large cap, small cap. A lot of people aren't necessarily sure what those risk categories are. So it's very important, before we start with everything else, it's very important to start with where is our risk tolerance now and where is it going to be in the future?
Absolutely. Also, you should protect some of your gains as you go. And that's something that we talk about a lot on this show. Logan Sadler has these reviews with you if you're a client, and sometimes your portfolio might need a little tweaking.
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, things like rebalancing are very important, where if we have really good returns in certain sectors, it's super important that we're rebalancing the portfolios, as well as looking at, different safe money opportunities. I've had a lot of clients, Ron, where returns have been rather great the last few years, and, then we get into some bumpy market volatility. But here's the thing is every type of market typically provides, some type of upside, right? Whether that's bad markets might provide good buying time to get up, over the long run with buying at a lower price. There's also things like CDs and treasuries and all that type of stuff we've been using for our clients right now, to where we've had a really good 10-year run in the market. Let's use some of that money we've gotten and use some safe money, right? Things like annuities are really competitive right now, whether that's fixed annuity where you want to put money in and get a guaranteed rate of return over a few years, or whether that's the fixed index annuity with market participation, or even just, some basic CDs and treasuries we've been structuring, because again, it's not a bad idea to capitalize on some of those gains we've had this last 5 or 10 year run here, and utilizing some of these safe market scenarios where the markets and the interest rate environment has really allowed those to be somewhat attractive now. So it's super important, like you said, at those you should be reviewing quite frequently with your advisor to making sure that you're still on track, and we need to make some adjustments, and it's time to do so.
One of the words that comes up a lot on this show is diversification, and you need to be sure that you're diversified appropriately. If and when the next market crash comes along, you can survive.
Yeah, it's so true. And I'm going to share more stories like I did. I think it was a few weeks ago, Ron, we were talking about. I've had two prospects that are coming on board with our firm right now, and a couple of them that were existing clients that had some outside accounts. And it was funny because they said, "Hey, Logan, I'm not quite sure what I did wrong here or what happened, but as the market was going crazy last year, I shifted more and more into bonds, and for some reason the portfolio kept going down pretty good, right?" And they said, "But I thought I was diversifying, right, by putting it into bonds." And so you look at it, and I was telling them, you were technically diversifying. The only problem is you were putting it into, in this instance, a certain asset class that was sometimes just as volatile as the equities or stocks that they were in, right? And they go, "Well, what do you mean? Bonds are safe, right?" And I go, "Well, no, that's the misconception. Bonds are not safe. They're just typically less volatile, right? They still have risk. That's where a lot of people forget. Most bond and bond funds do have some risk to them. And like last year, depending on the major bond indexes you were tracking, some of those bond funds in a 401k or some of the IRAs, some of them were down as low as, 14, 15, or 16% last year, right? And some people go, "Well, man, my market portfolio only went down, almost 20 or 15. Why did bonds go down just as much, right? I thought I was diversified." And that's why I always tell people it's very important you understand true diversification and looking at different assets in your retirement plan. Things like the annuities can be a good offset. We use a lot of different real estate investments for some of our clients, like different types of REITs and things like that. Real estate investment trusts can be a good offset, as well as things like structured notes and other types of investments like that, where you need to be able to make sure you're truly diversified with those portions of money that you don't want a lot of volatility on. You got to make sure you have it in other asset classes that don't just coincide with the traditional markets. And I think that's where a lot of people, aren't necessarily as prepared, like when we saw things like last year happen, Ron, with the bond market all over the place. I think it threw a lot of people for that big loop.
888-823-7526. But the easy way to remember that is 888-823 plan. You're listening to the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, and we're presenting a market crash survival guide here. Always have an understanding of how much risk you're exposed to. Protect some of your gains as you go along. Be sure that you're diversified in an appropriate way. And one piece of advice that comes up time and time again is don't try to time the market.
Yes, sir. Yeah, you're right. It's something where we talk about it on almost every show or every other show, it feels like, because it's just a very popular thing where people are constantly trying to do that, right? And it's one of those things where you just can't market time correctly. A lot of people think they're doing it right, and then you look at it over a period of time and you go, well, yeah, probably would have been better just to stay in, right? And so it's something where I think people that are market timing most often than not do not have that proper plan put in place. A lot of times when you have that plan put in place, it does alleviate a lot of that panic of having to, get in or get out of the market.
Yeah, and we're just got one more here on my list here, and it's a very important one. If you have a well-conceived plan in place, don't panic when the crash comes, even though it can be scary. Know that you are well prepared for whatever might happen.
Yeah, that's a great point, Ron. I mean, I think those of you out there that have a well put together plan, you have different asset classes in there, you have different income producing vehicles, you got some guaranteed income, you got other things like dividend portfolios, or you got a good plan overall put together that's built to last. You don't need to panic when the market goes up and down, right? Because you should have had everything all prepared and put together ahead of time. And like I always say, we use a storm as a good example, right? When the storm's coming, you don't prepare for the storm during the storm, right? You want to prepare well before the storm comes. And I think a lot of people out there do have that plan put together where they can have the confidence in it throughout their retirement. Now, with that said, Ron, there is a lot of people out there that don't have that solid retirement plan. I just have a call with a lady the other day, and she thought she was in a really good spot, had a secure retirement plan. Well, turns out, almost, she had about 1.3 million, I want to say it was, and almost 99% of it was all in equity stocks, wow. Right? A lot of different ones, so she thought she was diversified, but yeah, her portfolio is all over the place, right? And again, good, solid investments, but it's not necessarily the ideal retirement she had with the volatility she's been experiencing. So it's super important if you're one of those people out there that isn't sure if they have a retirement plan that's built to last, or you don't have one at all. I think it's super important to keep listening to the show, obviously get some good education, but if you want some more one-on-one and some more actual advice that pertains to your situation, that's what the discovery meeting is for. So you can go ahead and call in, leave a message. We'll get back to you on Monday morning, and basically you can schedule a one-on-one with me via Zoom or in person, and we can really take a deep dive into your plan, or if you don't have one, get one crafted for you and making sure that it's actually customized and built for you and built to last during whatever market storm comes our way.
888-823-PLAN, 888-823-PLAN. Logan just made a very good point just a moment ago when he said crafting a retirement plan for you, because it's all individual. It will be a retirement plan that is designed specifically for you and not anyone else. There's no one size fits all when it comes to retirement planning. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call to make it happen. All you have to do is leave a message with your name and phone number today, and you'll get a call back and set a time to have your conversation with Logan free of charge and obligation free as well. 888-823-PLAN. You could say that listening to this show every single week is a market crash survival guide, because we talk about all these things every single time when you listen in. It's a way to protect yourself from disasters as far as financial matters are concerned, and also to take advantage of the opportunities, not pay any more taxes than you absolutely have to, and to be safe in your retirement planning, and you can achieve peace of mind. 888-823-PLAN, your number to call to make that happen. Ron Stutz here along with Logan Sadler. You're listening to the Financial Beat. We'll be right back.
It's getting to know you time.
You're listening to the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, often imitated but never duplicated. And I'm proud to say that I get a chance to be on this show with Logan every single week. And hey, Logan, a lot of folks out there want to get to know you a little bit better, and maybe haven't gotten around to making that phone call to your office and setting up a discovery meeting, but might just be curious. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Man, that's hard. Anywhere in the world. That's a tough one. You know what's funny is me and my wife we visited a couple different times. We really like Nashville area in Tennessee.
Yeah.
I would say it'd probably be like, it seems like a good spot in the outskirts over there somewhere to to raise a family and do those types of family-oriented things. But in the world, I haven't been everywhere. So I'm going to say so far Nashville, but I'm sure there's some other places that would come up that I really enjoyed. But that might be one. Maybe Florida or somewhere like that too. I don't know. That's a hard one.
I've been in Nashville a couple of times myself, and I love it there. So
yeah, I could definitely see myself retiring there or moving there at some point down the road. But yeah, it's on the wish list.
There you go, folks. You've gotten to know Logan Sadler a little bit better, and we'll be back with more in a moment.
At the end of the day, no one truly understands your financial wants and desires better than you. That's why it's important to have financial independence. This means you can work when you want, you know exactly where your income is coming from, and most importantly, your finances are stable. If this sounds like something you want, well, text the word advice to the number 21,000, and Logan Sadler and his team at Regari Financial can provide you with their free guide on achieving financial independence. The free guide will show you how to create an action plan for getting to where you want to be. It'll explain how to calculate a financial independence goal, and it'll define what an ICE egg is and why it's so important. Download it now by texting the word advice to the number 21,000. Again, text the word advice to the number 21,000 to gain your financial independence today.
You're listening to The Financial Beat, the show that makes sure your financial plan has the perfect pitch.
We're back now with more of the Financial Beat. Logan Sadler is on the radio. Go tell everybody you know. 888-823-PLAN. That is your number to call if you'd like to have a conversation with Logan Sadler one-on-one. 888-823-PLAN. And, of course, we call it a discovery meeting. You can discover if you would like to work with Logan. He can discover things about you, and you can kind of get to know each other. 888-823-PLAN. Hey, Logan, one thing we haven't mentioned on today's show is the fact that not only do you have this radio show every week, but you have a variety of YouTube videos out there. And, of course, you can listen to the show on your favorite podcast platform, and all those things are easily available. Our listeners who may have joined us for the first time today, tell them about those.
Yeah, you can head over to podcasts, wherever you download those at. You can head over to podcast platforms like Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon, wherever it is you listen to them, and you type in The Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, and it'll populate, again, over 100 episodes now for you there to go check out. Each one of them is about an hour long to give you some good insight and some good education. That's what this show is all about. We can't talk to everybody at every single time, right? But we can give you some good information out there on the podcast, as well as the YouTube channel we do is uploaded weekly as well. It's all new content on different short videos that pertain to retirement education. A lot of them are viewer questions on different retirement planning topics that we cover. So again, there's quite a few different videos up there now, and we update those each week with new videos. So you head over to YouTube and type in, again, The Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, and it'll populate for you, and follow those along and click subscribe.
I love what you just said. You go there and it'll populate. All of a sudden, you have access to 100 of those darn things. It's amazing.
100 of them, yeah. It's added up pretty quick.
Yeah. Got a really interesting story here about something that happened in New York. An 82-year-old woman was recently pronounced dead at a Long Island nursing home and then delivered to a local mortuary. Only problem was that the funeral home employees discovered that she was still breathing 3 hours after she'd been pronounced dead. She was then sent to the hospital, but I don't have any further updates on that story, so I don't know how it all ended up. But isn't that incredibly sad? I suppose it could happen, but boy, somebody didn't do a very good assessment of this patient.
Yeah, I'd like to hear the ending to that story. That is quite amazing where, yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's happened, right? But it's amazing, like you said, that they were actually brought to the mortuary, and it's like, hey, person's still alive. That is pretty crazy to think about, that stuff like that can happen.
I hope that had a happy ending, but the woman was
me too.
82 years old, and, who knows. But, we're talking about, kind of morbid topics here, but when a client comes to you, whether it's a man or a woman, right after losing their spouse, what are they typically most concerned about?
Yeah, there's probably, 5 things I would say that are typically the biggest talking points, right? Mm-hmm. Outside of the emotional impact, I always say, because that's number one, right?
Right.
Having to go through the loss of somebody like that is probably one of the hardest things to get through. But unfortunately, after that, we then have to deal with the financial aspect, right? Because that's still a huge thing. So I would say it typically starts, Ron, with income, right? I mean, a lot of the times we're looking at where is income going to be reduced at? And I typically it's, Social Security. A lot of the times is you lose one of the spouse's income. A lot of people aren't aware of this, but let's say Joe gets, Joe gets $2,500 a month and Sue gets $2,000 a month, right? Mm-hmm. If Joe passed away, Sue would get the $2,500 a month, but she would lose her $2,000 a month.
Get the higher of the two.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah, you get the higher of the two. And so the biggest thing, Ron, is that most people aren't aware of that. They're like, I don't have to worry about replacing income. We're fine, right? We got Social Security and some investments and things like that. But the problem is that most of us are going to have to replace income at some point, right? Because Social Security, you're going to lose one of them. So looking at that, as well as pensions, right? Maybe single pensions or reduction in benefits is something to look at. So income is typically one of the highest things on the list we look at of how are we going to look at income. Then you have things like tax rates. A lot of people aren't aware that single tax rates are different than joint tax rates. And one of the things on a side note, Ron, is those of you out there that are you're still married and everything's going good in your young stages of planning, one of the biggest reasons to look at if a Roth conversion is good, right for you or not, is not only current income and future taxes and all that stuff, but also if you have a large portion of IRAs or taxable assets, the biggest problem is that tax rates are a lot more compressed when you're filing single, meaning most of the time people that are still going to have a good income and they're going to be single, you're going to be paying typically a much higher tax rate in retirement. So a lot of the times Roth IRA and Roth conversions and things like that could be huge. So next is taxes, Ron. I would say that's the next biggest thing. Mm-hmm. And then, navigating the will and the executors and the estate planning matters. Again, we work with part of the big thing about our firm is we work with professionals in all these realms. So it's not like, hey, something happened with you, let's cover the income, then you're on your own, go find someone to help you with the rest of it, right? We actually have, we work with tax people that are, we have actually probably 4 or 5 different CPAs and tax professionals that we work with, as well as on the estate planning side. We have, 2 or 3 different really good estate planning attorneys that we've worked with that you can kind of interview, see which one of them is right for you, and get the estate plan in order. That's typically kind of the next one, right? Is to make sure that, okay, we just lost, Joe or Sue or whoever it is, and now we got to make sure we cover those things. Estate plans typically in the top one, Ron, and then I would have to say next is claims, right? You look at things like life insurance claims, sometimes even, just switching over the IRAs from the husband's name to the spouse, to the other spouse, or from vice versa. A lot of it's paperwork. And so we actually have a lady at our office, Brenda, she's been with us about 13 years, and she helps all of our clients with existing claims and things like that, because it's really a full-time job when something like that happens. They send you basically, it feels like it's like, those Harry Potter books that were like 500 pages, right? Or whatever it was. Yeah. That's what it feels like, right? When they send you claims. So we have someone that actually helps sort all that out, because that's normally one of the next biggest things. And then the other thing is I'd say sometimes the most challenging, Ron. And this is maybe you're the spouse that didn't really handle the financial matters, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe your husband that passed did, or maybe your wife that passed did. They handled those, and now it's a whole new realm, right? And maybe you didn't even have a relationship with your financial advisor before, and now you're going to have to try to find one, right? Find a relationship or start to feel the confidence. And that's why one of the biggest things out there for those of you that are in relationships or marriages where maybe you handle the finances or you have the relationship with the financial advisor, that's great, right? It's okay to have a lead role, I call it, with the financial advisor. But I always tell people, I encourage people as much as possible to have their spouses come to the meetings or be on the calls or be at least aware, because what it allows it to do is build that relationship to where if something happens and they're not the one that's super confident, they already have that rapport and relationship built up with the advisor to where they're not just having to kind of essentially re-meet them for the first time, right? Because they already have a lot of other things going through their head. And so that's why I always tell people, Ron, when you're hiring a financial advisor, if you like them and your wife doesn't, or she likes them and your husband doesn't, that's not a great fit, right? You want to find someone that you both can relate to and you both can work with, because it's, you're hiring someone, like I always say, not just to handle your assets, but you're trusting someone to help guide your family when you're no longer there, right? So it's super, super important.
Absolutely important. And, it's so important to have both people in the relationship on the same page. And I know you do a good job with that. And, some folks, don't want to come to meet you, but it's so important to get them both together when you can. Logan Sadler's number, by the way, is 888-823-PLAN. That is 888-823-PLAN. You're listening to the Financial Beat. We're talking about a really sad situation, one of the most emotional situations ever, and that is the death of a spouse. Take a moment, if you would, Logan, and tell us a story about a widowed spouse who was left in a difficult financial position because of poor planning.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've had a few of those where we've came across, and one of them, most of them aren't clients of ours. They're doing someone that comes to us afterwards, and I had one not that long ago, actually, Ron, where her husband passed away, and unfortunately it was really early in life. He was only in his early 70s, and so that's, believe it or not, for most people out there listening, yes, that is very early, right? Because a lot of people are living a pretty long time nowadays. And so anyway, it was a husband and wife that were married, and they had put away some pretty good assets. And I think they had around $400,000 or so, Ron, of assets for IRAs, Roth IRAs, stuff like that. And they had pensions and Social Security. And one of the most unfortunate parts is they didn't plan on if something happened to one or the other, right? Mm-hmm. They just thought that with pensions and stuff they'll be fine. Well, the biggest problem, Ron, was the pension that her husband had was a single pension. Oh, wow. So they took I think he was getting around $3,500 per month. When he passed away, it went to zero, right? And so right off the bat, you had $3,500 per month was gone. Now, okay, people are saying, well, yeah, she still has $400,000, right? Well, then here's the other part, right? She also lost her Social Security of $2,000 a month, right? So, you look at it right there, $5,000-$6,000 almost of income, is a pretty big swing to have to recover, right? Yeah, yes, she had some assets and stuff like that, but she was going to have to significantly probably reduce her income in that circumstance. And the whole goal was to leave some money behind for her kids and stuff like that with the other money. So it really threw a big wrench in her retirement plan, Ron, with how to have things structured and how much more pressure now it was going to put on her investments. And again, maybe just electing a joint pension or a 75% survivor pension would have been a better route to go, but they didn't really consult anybody at that time. They just wanted to have the higher amount. He was actually very, very healthy. They thought, the chances would be on their side. And so unfortunately, it was a situation where just improper planning now is going to totally change their situation there with how things worked out.
Yeah, that's a tough situation. But let's flip that. On the other hand, how about a widowed spouse who was left in a very solid financial position because of good financial planning?
Yeah, those are the funner ones to talk about, right? Yeah, I think, I have actually one of our clients who passed away this last year and unfortunately was with us for, they've been with us, I want to say around 15 years or so now. And husband and wife, really, really great family. And they became, a lot of our clients become a lot more than clients, right? We get to know them pretty well. And so they become, my opinion, they've become pretty good friends. And so, unfortunately, he actually ended up passing away at the very early age of 74. And the spouse was the same age. He was 74, very healthy. And they had just put themselves in an ideal situation. They just worked their butts off, for 20, 30, 40 years and put themselves in a really good situation. And we did a lot of proper planning ahead of time to where, they had he didn't have a pension, but they wanted some guaranteed income. So they actually had a lot of their money in income annuities that were going to provide income for them. All of those were on joint incomes, right? So what that means is if something happened to the other one, if they were getting $2,000 a month, if something happened to, let's just call him Steve. If something happened to Steve, well, then Sue still gets the same $2,000 a month, right? There's no change in income. So all of their incomes were on joint incomes, and all she lost was his Social Security. But they had an additional, $500,000 or $600,000 to help make up that Social Security. But because they had no debt, all of their stuff was paid down. They actually had some life insurance that was still in there, so about a $400,000 life insurance. So now she's at a point where she could have even more income now in retirement than when he was alive, right? If she wanted to. Or now she has those assets to help kind of structure to pass on to the kids. So it was one of those situations where it was a very hard thing to go through on the emotional end. But on the financial end, they put all the legwork in. We had done a very good job on our end putting the plan in place. And so she was in a situation where her retirement wasn't going to change not even $1. Right. And so I think that's kind of the ideal way, if you can, to set things up to where your retirement picture is not going to change if something happens to one or the other. Just you got to deal with it on the emotional side, not the financial side.
Unfortunately, those are some of the items the things that happen in Logan Sadler's career, where he enjoys working with folks, but sometimes it can get really emotional, and when there's a death of a spouse, and sometimes it's another event like a divorce or something like that, and Logan would be happy to talk to you and make sure that you're well prepared for whatever may happen. And Logan, I'm going to give out that number in just a second here, but when someone calls in and they arrange to have a discovery meeting, what happens in that discovery meeting?
Yeah, Ron, it's one of the best parts about our discovery process, like we always say, is it's not one of those sales pitch meetings. Really, it's kind of I introduce ourselves, talk a little bit about our firm for a few minutes, and really the remaining, 30, 40 minutes or so is really all about you. I'm really just trying to get to understand what it is you're trying to do. What's your experience with money, right? What's your experience in the market? What's your experience with things in the past when it comes to financials? But also, what are you looking to accomplish, right? What is your ideal of retirement moving forward? And so we really do a lot more of just trying to answer questions to see kind of where you're at and what you're looking for out of your retirement, and then seeing if we're a good fit. Because again, we're a comprehensive financial planning firm that specializes in getting people to and through retirement. And so, there's some clients out there that are a perfect fit for us and we're a perfect fit for them. And some clients are maybe looking for something different, right? So I think it all starts with that good discovery meeting where we can get a chance to get to know one another and see if we're a good fit. And if so, let's move on to the rest of the process and see what building that plan looks like. But it all starts that discovery meeting to see, again, that introduction. And the best part about it is we do a lot of those via Zoom or even in person, and we can kind of go through everything. And the best part about it is, though, is you don't meet with anybody else. You actually meet with me, the same person here right here on the radio, where we could dive into your situation, and we don't pass you off. So you get a good chance to hear a lot of these concepts I've been talking about on the radio, but again, how they pertain to you.
888-823-PLAN, 888-823-PLAN. Hope you'll write down that number, and better yet, go ahead and jot it down now, but go ahead and make the call right away. Then you don't have to rely on your memory or about, when you're going to get around to it. 888-823-PLAN, your number to call for Regari Financial, offices in Hemet and Redlands, wherever you are in Southern California. Thank you so much for being with us today. One more time, the number 888-823-PLAN. You can get a discovery meeting that's not going to cost you a penny and not going to obligate you to do anything at all beyond that. You're listening to the Financial Beat. Ron Stutz here along with Logan Sadler, and there's more on the other side of this timeout.
Does it feel like you and your financial advisor aren't on the same page?
Not quite my tempo. Were you rushing or were you dragging?
Logan and the team at Regari Financial can stay in tune and on rhythm with you. Keep listening to the Financial Beat.
We're back now with more of the Financial Beat. Ron Stutz here along with Logan Sadler, Vice President, Chief Investment Officer at Regari Financial, with a couple of offices in Southern California, Hemet, and also in Redlands. But you can get together with Logan either by phone or via Zoom. He conducts a lot of get-togethers that way. And first, to set it up, you need to call 888-823-PLAN. 888-823-PLAN. Simply leave a message with your name and your phone number. You'll get a call back and set up a convenient time for that discovery meeting. 888-823-PLAN. Remember, at Regari Financial, they have great partnerships with local CPAs, attorneys, real estate agents, mortgage lenders, and Medicare specialists even. They help offer well-rounded guidance in all things financial for their clients, and you can get a discovery meeting at no cost whatsoever. And you'll also enjoy talking to Logan Sadler. I can almost guarantee that. Can't really guarantee that, but I think I can safely say that you're going to like talking to Logan. So, hey, Logan, you ready to go to the mailbag?
I'm ready.
Got some great questions today that have come in. First one is from Mark in Menifee. And Mark says, my wife and I moved from the Bay Area last year and sold our home there because the property value was so high when we sold it. We were able to buy 3 different homes here, 2 of which we use as rental properties. We're in our late 50s. That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah. We're in our late 50s and don't have nearly as much retirement savings as I feel that we should, but will we be okay as long as we have these 2 rental properties?
Yeah, great question there. I was sorry, Mark. I was laughing at your question there because it's so funny because people that aren't from California, right, they can't even fathom how expensive the Bay Area is, right? So, yeah, it's funny. So, yeah, to answer your question more specific, real estate can be a very, very good retirement tool or even a good, income tool to use. But like I always say with everything, right? Everything has a pro and a con. Now, what I'm a big preacher of is when it comes to retirement planning, you typically want diversification of assets, right? And so I wouldn't say, you don't necessarily want all your money 100% in the market, but you probably don't want all your money 100% in real estate either, right? So I think kind of finding that balance there of maybe, looking at some other areas that might help produce some other income sources for you might be a good fit. Other maybe market investments or annuities or structured notes or whatever else it is that might be outside the real estate sector. But as far as producing income and things like that, I'm one of those people, I'll never talk bad about real estate. It's a great wealth building tool. It's been a great income producing thing, but there is some cons, right? Because you do got to look at for retirement, if you don't have somebody in there, you got to look at you have no income coming in that month. You have damages, how old are the houses you bought? You might have repairs and things like that come up, as well as you might got to be prepared for, you might have some bad tenants. So you got to make sure when you're looking, you're kind of outweighing all those pros and cons and making sure, again, it fits your profile there. But again, from the standpoint of real estate is a great tool, but you might want to look at some other asset classes to help diversify in there to add to the real estate.
Great question, Mark. And Mark, if you want to follow up with a conversation with Logan about all this, the number to call, 888-823-PLAN. Next question is from Vanessa in Anaheim. And Vanessa says, I always max out my Roth IRA every year, but I do it with equal monthly contributions. This year, I'm getting a big raise at work and just discovered that depending on my end-of-year bonus, I might end up earning too much to be able to put money in the Roth this year. What happens with the money that I've already put in it so far this year? And should I stop contributing for the rest of the year now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've actually had quite a few clients run into this problem where it gets real close. And what I always advise is you don't need to do anything yet. What I would do is work with your tax person on this. They're really great because they could help. When it comes time, you could actually see exactly how much your income is. That way you could see how much you could put in or if you should be putting in at all. What I would double check is I would take those contributions. If you think for sure you're going to be really close to it, put those contributions into a bank account for now and just a savings account. And at the end of the year, if you find out if you can still contribute to the Roth, then great. You have that money still to put into there. But if not, if that way you don't have to contribute and then we'll run the risk of being over the income limit, because what you'd have to do in some cases is, again, you could back out the contributions, meaning you could take the money back out. Those can be kind of a hassle, but you could definitely do that. But I would say the first thing I would do is get with the tax person and make sure, hey, based off income and things like that, where would this raise put me? Would it for sure put me over the amount? If so, I probably would stop contributing. And you can look at other things like backdoor Roth IRAs are a good spot to start. Non-qualified, individual brokerage accounts, those have no contribution limits or no income limits. So there still is some ways to contribute to things, but I would definitely start with getting with the tax person and kind of projecting where that bonus will put you or that raise will put you, just to make sure you're not running over that limit.
Yeah, you got to make sure you do it right. That's for sure.
Yes.
Next question here is from Andre in Palm Springs. And Andre says, the time has come to start writing checks for my daughter's wedding. I don't have enough in my checking account to cover everything, so I'm exploring my options. I could do a 401k loan, a home equity loan, or simply pull money out of one of my retirement accounts. Is one of those better than the other?
Yeah, that's a great question, Andre. I think, well, first off, congratulations on the future wedding, but I know those could be a happy moment and then also a sad moment when it comes time to the pocketbook side of things, right?
Got it, yeah.
Yeah, it's like buying a house nowadays. But what I would say is it really kind of depends on your situation. And I'm not a huge fan of tapping home equity. I'm not a huge fan of tapping 401k loans unless you need to, right? Typically, if you could afford the withdrawal, if that's better for you based off your situation, based off taxes and age and all that, it might be a better way to go. Or maybe simply just getting a small loan or a payment plan worked out with the venue is sometimes a good way to go as well, just based off rates and things like that. But I would probably go on those two routes just because you don't want to get too... A lot of people, I could borrow from myself in the 401k, which is, yes, it's true. The unfortunate part about it is I see a lot of people not pay that back nearly as quickly as they say they were going to. And it sounds like you might be somewhere closer to retirement age. So it could really have some effects on it. So what I would do is I would look at, how much do I have in there? What would the taxes be? What other assets do I have? Does it make sense to pull from that account? Or is it better to maybe just get a traditional loan and pay those off myself outside of retirement dollars?
Well, a lot of good questions today from Andre, Vanessa, and Mark, and a lot of other folks out there may have a lot of questions that they'd like to ask you, and they can get some of the answers in the discovery meeting. What happens in that discovery meeting when you talk to somebody for the very first time?
Yeah, the best part about our meetings, Ron, as I always say, is one of the best things we like to talk about is relationships, right? I think having a good rapport with a client and a good rapport with the advisor is something that's so important. So we start a lot with building those relationships and kind of going through what it is you're trying to accomplish, what it is you're looking for, because, we're one of those advisors where most of our clients, I always say, they're very different, right? They have a lot of different needs and goals and all that. But since we specialize in retirement planning, like we don't have a lot of 20-year-old clients or 30-year-old clients, and a lot of advisors specialize in different realms. Right? And our realm is retirement planning. So when it comes to retirement planning, we're typically able to provide that comprehensive scope to give you the ideas and the solutions you'll need to have that ideal retirement. And now at the discovery meeting itself, we really just kind of dive into your situation, what it is you're looking to do in retirement, and help you put all of those goals and dreams and envisionments of how you picture retirement into that full comprehensive plan, and making sure that it's something that's going to be sustainable, making sure it's something that's going to be doable, with what we're trying to do in your time frame, and giving you the expertise on how to execute it. So we talk, all of that starts really though, Ron, at that discovery meeting. So give us a call, come in. I'd love to sit down, spend an hour with you, and again, see if we're a good fit to work together.
Here's the number to make it happen, 888-823-PLAN. That is 888-823-7526. But the easy way to recall that number is by using the word PLAN, 888-823-PLAN. Call that number right now. Leave a message with your name and phone number. You'll get a call back from the outstanding folks at Regari Financial, and you can set a time to have your discovery meeting with Logan Sadler. Could be on the phone, more likely Zoom, or you might even want to come into one of the offices. Hemet and Redlands is where they are. Logan Sadler is the guy you will talk to, same guy you hear on the radio show every week, on the podcast, on the YouTube channel. Check all those sources out, and you can get a discovery meeting for no cost and no obligation. Hey, Logan, it's been fun hanging out with you for a while today. I know you've helped a lot of people out there.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. I appreciate it. I always say I love doing the show. There's so many people out there nowadays, and we can't, talk. I can't have a discovery meeting with every single person in the world, right? But we still love to give out good retirement education and some general concepts, and hopefully this, gives you some good information. And we look forward to doing this show each week, and we're going to be back here again next week with another one.
Join us for the next edition of the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, Regari Financial. I'm Ron Stutz. See you next time.
The information provided is for educational purposes only and is not intended as investment advice for anyone. All information discussed is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representation as to its completeness or accuracy. The views presented today are those of BD Financial Group and do not necessarily represent the views of Alpha Star Capital Management, LLC. The opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not constitute financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult with your financial professional before executing any financial strategy. Investment advisory and financial planning services are offered through Alpha Star Capital Management, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Alpha Star and BD Financial Group are independent entities. SEC registration does not constitute an endorsement of the firm by the Commission, nor does it indicate that the advisor has attained a particular level of skill or ability.